To truly understand this, you have to understand the atmosphere of Greenock itself. It's a gritty, industrial town on the west coast of Scotland, shaped by the shipbuilding trade and the cold, biting winds of the River Clyde. It's a place of grey stone and heavy rain, the kind of place where a person could easily go unnoticed if they really wanted to. The legend didn't start on the internet. It started in the 1970s. Imagine being a worker in the Scots Yard shipyards, finishing a late night shift in the pouring rain. You're walking past a patch of overgrown, thorny brush, and you hear a rustle. You shine your torch into the darkness, expecting a fox or a stray dog, but instead you see a man. But he isn't standing. He's low to the ground, moving on all fours with a speed that doesn't seem possible for a human. His skin is pitch black, looking like charred leather or heavy grease. He doesn't say a word. He just stares back with eyes that catch the light, reflecting it just like a cat's. For 40 years, this man was the shadow of Greenock. To the local children, he was the boogeyman. Parents would tell their kids to be home before dark, or the Catman would get them. But as those children grew up, they realized the truth was much stranger and far more tragic than a campfire story. The grease people saw wasn't just dirt. Rumor has it he used thick axle grease as a primitive layer of insulation. He'd coat his skin in it to stay dry and trap his body heat against the brutal Scottish winters. He had turned himself into a creature of pure survival. What's truly incredible is the physical and mental toll that kind of life takes. We aren't talking about a weekend camping trip. We're talking about 4 decades in the mud. No running water, no bed, no heat. He lived in a den, a hollowed-out space in the brush reinforced with scrap wood and metal. And he wasn't alone. He had this eerie, almost spiritual connection with the local stray cats. They didn't hiss at him or run away. They treated him like the leader of the pack. There are stories of people watching him share whatever food he found with cats that were too sick to hunt for themselves. He had stepped out of the human world and been accepted by another species entirely. Everything changed in the mid-2000s when the internet found him. A grainy cell phone video surfaced showing him lying in the dirt, staring at the camera while holding a rat in his mouth. To the rest of the world, it was a creepypasta come to life, something to be gawked at or turned into a meme. People started traveling from all over the UK just to go catman hunting. They'd throw stones into the bushes or shout insults just to get him to show his face. It was a cruel, modern intrusion into a life that had been lived in silence for 30 years. But this is where the people of Greenock showed who they really were. Despite the frightening appearance and the bizarre behavior, the community became his silent protectors. They didn't like the tourists or the YouTubers poking around. The locals knew he wasn't a monster. He was a man who had clearly suffered some kind of massive, unspoken trauma. They'd leave out care packages, bottles of water, blankets, warm clothes, and tobacco, and they'd leave them in specific spots, walking away so he could collect them without having to face another human being. They allowed him to keep his dignity in the only way he knew how. Think about the mystery of his identity for a moment. In a town where everyone knows everyone's business, nobody could ever put a name to him. Some believed he was a foreign sailor who had a mental breakdown and simply walked off his ship and into the woods. Others thought he was a local man who had lost his family and couldn't bear to live in a house that felt empty. There were even rumors that he was a genius, an engineer or a scholar, who had just decided that the modern world was a failure and opted out of it completely. But he never spoke. Not once. In 40 years of sightings, there is no record of him saying a single word. He had buried his human voice long ago. As we reached 2017, the sightings started to fade. The rustling in the bushes at Scott's yard went quiet. The cats that usually hung around his den started to scatter. For the first time in nearly half a century, the Catman was gone. There was no big announcement, no police cordon, no body found. He simply ceased to be. Some people like to think he finally found a warm bed, but those who knew the legend best believe he did exactly what he'd always done. He found a spot where no one could find him, laid down in the earth he'd lived in for so long, and let the shadows take him back. He leaves behind a legacy that is half nightmare and half heartbreak. He reminds us that even in our world of GPS, social media, and constant surveillance, a person can still choose to become a ghost. He wasn't a creature from a horror movie. He was a man who found more peace in the dirt with the strays than he ever found with us. And maybe, in a strange way, that makes him the most human story of all.
Them silently as they hurry back into the safety of their homes. The Catman of Greenock is an urban legend that originated sometime in the 1970s. Children all over Scotland have been told stories of a small man-like creature with completely coal-black skin and glowing eyes. It is said that when the full moon rises, the Catman would prowl around through the shadows, viciously devouring rodents and frightening anyone unlucky enough to stumble across him. Stories of his sightings were passed around between terrified schoolchildren, and this nightmare fuel was believed to be simply that, just a dream. To some people, the Catman was a cryptozoological beast, an offshoot of some long-dead primitive species, the very last of its kind that was surviving along the edges of society. To others, the legend of the Catman was the work of local pranksters, intent on scaring drunkards that stumble out of the pub at night, all for a good laugh. Even the police, who often fielded reports about Catman sightings, were unsure of what to make of these stories. The legend became much more real when an unnerving cell phone video surfaced online, taken by a local boy in 2007. The grainy video shows an older man, covered completely in soot, with a pitch-black face and hands. The disfigured man is crawling around under cars in a bus garage located next to what was believed to be his den. He lays on his stomach and has a large dead rodent hanging out of his mouth. He looks at the camera with a blank expression, gives a thumbs up to the videographer, and continues eating his rat. The Catman of Greenock had finally been spotted with concrete evidence. As the video began to spread online, the Greenock social work sent someone to the site to locate the Catman and provide him assistance, fearing the man was suffering from a mental health disorder. However, the worker could never find him. Photos of the Catman began to appear online intermittently for the next few years. One photo surfaced showing a young girl posing next to the man with the glowing eyes, and another photo shows the Catman next to a tray of food and water left by a charitable passerby. The most popular theory is that the Catman was once a Russian sailor who had gotten stranded in Scotland in the 1970s. Without any money or family, he was forced to live on the streets, scrounging for food. Eventually, his mental state deteriorated and he became as much a beast as he was a man, living alone in the woods and sustaining himself on vermin. Others say he was a man who had found himself on the wrong end of a situation with the mob, who broke his legs, explaining why he is so often seen crawling around and why he stays hidden most of the time for fear of ever being found again. According to those very few who have interacted with him, the Catman is strange yet harmless. He is believed to live down a narrow, cobbled lane near the east end of town. He does not live in any shelter as far as anyone is found, but was seen coming out of the scrublands and wooded areas. He has been known to stand from time to time and respond to people, but he cannot speak and would emote with simple gestures. He's usually seen crawling on the ground or even slithering about, always covered in soot with cat-like eyes. He eats rats and mice, and may even eat food that's been left out for him by well-intentioned locals. As far as being the Catman, it is said he is often around cats, or that he may be sharing his den with some cats, but that he will not harm them. The relationship appears to be more that he looks after them, although some people imagine that he might also believe he too is a cat. The Catman of Greenock is known to disappear from time to time, but he has always returned. Images of his blackened face have surfaced as recently as April 2015. However, there haven't been any reported news sightings of him since the summer of 2017, and some of his most ardent fans are worried about his well-being, fearing the worst has happened and that it's only a matter of time until his body is discovered, or that his body would be consumed by the feline friends for which he gets his namesake.